is the Will Cain Podcast on ESPN Radio.
The biggest threat to the NFL is taking place live right now. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. So Rudy's in my shot here on ESPN News. He's hanging out in studio because here we go. We're trying to get it up on screen. If you're just joining us, here's what's going on in the sports world as we speak. Vince McMahon, CEO of Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment, whatever it is, WWE, is that right, Nuno?
Definitely.
Something like that. He is, here we go, this is great. He is giving a press conference right now announcing the launch or the relaunch of the XFL. The hashtag in the corner of the screen says XFL 2020. We're looking at the newest, latest, most serious threat to the NFL. A competitor with real teeth. The WWE, Vince McMahon. Let's take it for a moment. Let's just hear what Vince McMahon is saying right now.
Professional football reimagined. Since we're launching in 2020, we have 2 years, which is plenty of time to really get it right. We intend to start conservatively with 8 teams,
loaded word,
40-man rosters, a 10-game regular season, and postseason featuring 2 semifinals, and, of course, a championship game. Now, what about the players? As you know, there's a wealth of talented players that we can draw from, but in the XFL, the quality of the human being...
Let me know, Nuno, if he brings up Colin Kaepernick, RG3, Johnny Manziel, or Tim Tebow. If any of those names come up, I want to go back live right away to the XFL announcement launch press conference taking place right now. The minute you hear that voice, you realize we got ourselves a competitor, boys. Here, take it up one more time, Bubba. Let me just hear that voice. Vince McMahon.
Mobile devices and everything in between. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your interest, and if you have any ideas, please send them along our way because we are listening.
Oh, a crowdsourcing.
New XFL will be it'll be a game that's reimagined. Reimagine the game of professional football. I'm sure you want to get to some questions, so fire away.
All right, take it down. Let me know what any of those questions are when he's taking this. So here's the thing. That deep Vince McMahon growling, ringside, soap opera, WWE voice. I'm telling you, man, that thing sells. I truly believe this. This is not me being hyperbolic. This is not me joking. This is a threat to the NFL. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. I understand that the XFL has been tried and failed. I understand that the NFL is the giant on the block. But because of that fact is why I think the XFL is a real threat to the NFL. You see, I firmly believe this. Americans want football. Football is great. Football is America, and we want more of it, not less of it. And the big guy on the block, the giant, the behemoth, is the NFL and has been for decades. But that behemoth is showing weaknesses. That behemoth is showing vulnerabilities. Ratings for the conference championship games in the AFC and the NFC were down 8%. Ratings for the divisional games were down some games in some windows as low as 2009. In other windows, the lowest it had been in 15 years. Now, we can talk about why. Why are ratings down in the NFL? And the truth is, there's no singular reason. There's cord cutting. Consumers moving from cable to streaming options. There is the fact that there's more entertainment choices across the board. On any given afternoon on Sunday or Sunday night, you can watch Peaky Blinders on Netflix if you want, or another season of Narcos, or you can watch the latest NFL game. There is a problem with stars in the NFL. Fewer and fewer stars, mostly at the quarterback position, hurts the product. Perhaps politics has played some role. At least there has been some suggestion, both on the left and the right, that people are tuning out the NFL because of positions and stances that it's taken. I can't tell you today, I can't sit here, and I won't sit here and tell you that politics is the reason that the ratings are down for the NFL. But when you're creating your multiple choice list for why the NFL's shown vulnerabilities, you have to consider all alternatives. And then there's the games themselves. Have the games themselves showed any vulnerabilities? Well, the product hasn't necessarily been, outside of moments like in the Vikings and Saints game, compelling all the way to the end. Now, I love NFL. I love football. I love professional football. I love college football. My ranking of sports goes football and then football again. And the threat to football, I believe, will come from within. Now, if you ever saw the 30 for 30 documentary on the XFL, you know what killed the XFL was itself. Namely, one of the biggest mistakes was moving from the spring to the fall. A move, by the way, in the documentary suggested by Donald Trump. If there is room in football, by the way, has Vince McMahon said this? Nuno, has he mentioned spring or fall?
No, he hasn't yet.
Take it up for a minute. Let's hear what he's talking about.
People who really know what they're doing, experienced executives who will be out in front. It won't be me.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, is it a conference call question?
Our next question from Chris
What's that?
Palmieri with Bloomberg News.
That question was from Ravel.
Hello, Chris.
Yeah, hi, Vince.
That was Darren
Can
Ravel.
you say if the controversy about bending knee and the rating slump that the NFL has had seen played a role in your thinking about launching this now?
No. I've always wanted to relaunch and had this planned for some time.
Ooh, in and out of
I
that
could just
one
follow
quickly.
up, why are you not doing it this time through the WWE?
Quite frankly, $100 million to start with is a little too rich for WWE as far as investment's concerned.
All right, take it down. What Vince McMahon did is he sold $100 million of WWE stock to fund this launch, to fund what he's calling Alpha Entertainment, which is pretty interesting of note to name your company anyway. Alpha. If there was any doubt if Vince McMahon was Alpha or Beta, he's here to tell you. I know which one I am. Did my voice not indicate? Alpha Boys. And so he's using that $100 million to personally launch the XFL. Now, Cerruti, I know this is something you disagree with me on. I love the NBA. Look, man, I love all sports. And I've been, like, going to the therapist, I've admitted to this audience. Again, you're listening to the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. I like soccer. I like all sports. But I'm under no delusion that the NBA is going to overtake the NFL, that the NBA is set to pounce on the NFL's vulnerabilities. No, instead, I think this is the competitor the NFL needs to be concerned about.
Yeah, but it's always going to be a lesser brand of football, right?
Well, okay, so let me amend one thing. When I say this, I mean less XFL and more football. The threat to the NFL will come from football, maybe college football. College football is the one that's seen ratings increases while NFL ratings have gone down. What is this?
This is from Hembo, who's one of our researchers.
I love when Hembo emails in. He's got all the numbers. 57% of Americans said they were fans of professional football, down 10% from the previous time this question was asked in 2012. So this is showing a decline in the number of Americans saying they are fans of professional football. The drop-off did not occur among college football fans. So listen, I think that the threat to football or to the NFL comes from the sport itself, perhaps from the college levels. But look at this. If the XFL comes in and you said, what does it got to do? What does it have to do to win you over? Think about it. Define a catch. I heard Levitard and them joking. They're going to play the national anthem all game long at all times.
I said no penalties whatsoever.
No penalties.
You don't stop any. The play never stops. There's no holding calls.
Hold on, Cerruti. Bubba says go back. What's he got going?
Football, but to make it as safe as possible.
What I miss? He said he wants
specific measures that you can say?
No, not anything specifically other than, we're going to bring in experts who are going to help us in all these fields. And as I mentioned many times in my remarks, listening. We're going to listen to those medical experts and heed their advice, again, to make it as safe as possible.
Okay, take it down. What did he say, Bubba, that I missed? Did he say concussions are all go here? All go
well,
concussions?
It's still football. So, they're going to try to make it as safe, but it's still football. Also, he said he's looking, it's not going to be a spring league, so he's hoping end of January, beginning of February, that's when they'll start playing.
Oh, but to coincide when the NFL goes on hiatus.
Correct.
Okay, look, let's take a quick break. We're straight ahead. I want to get into this a little bit more because if you were designing it today, if you were designing the XFL to be a real serious competitor to the NFL, and I understand the long shot that this is, but if you saw holes in the game, what could they be for the XFL to go in and actually be a serious threat? That's Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. That's coming up straight ahead on the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. What's up, everyone? Will Cain here. Support for the Will Cain podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/will. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 30-30.
Breaking news here on SportsCenter. WWE founder and CEO Vince McMahon getting back into the football business. The main challenge of the XFL, people at the end of the day wanted real football. Can real football be had with a base of players who are not NFL players?
America wasn't ready for the XFL back then, but now, when football has been forced by science to actually feel like it's going soft?
If you're just joining us, Vince McMahon is sitting in front of a television screen right now by himself, announcing the launch of the XFL. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. You want to take it live right now? Okay, let's hear what he's saying. Let's go.
Again, we're going to listen to football experts. We're going to listen to what the audience, what fans want, more than anything else. I'm going to be listening to you guys as well in terms of what you think is going to be appropriate. As far as the national anthem is concerned, I think, again, it's a time-honored tradition to stand and appreciate the national anthem with any sport here in America, or for that matter, in any country. They do that. So I think it'd be appropriate to do that.
All right, take him down. Let me know if he brings something up. Here's the deal. I said this just a moment ago. I said this. I think the XFL represents a threat to the NFL, a real threat to the NFL. And as we speak, Johnny Manziel just tweeted, hashtag XFL 2020 at Vince McMahon. So here's what I think. All right. Here's what I mean. There's been a lot of talk. I've done this conversation on First Take. I've done this conversation here. Cerruti, for example, my producer, believes in this proposition that the threat to the NFL is going to come from the NBA. That while the NFL is showing ratings vulnerabilities, conference championship games down 8%, divisional playoff games down sometimes as low as they've been in 15 years. While the NFL is showing these vulnerabilities, the NBA is increasing. But I don't think the NBA represents a real threat to the NFL. I think that's two different platters at your buffet. I don't think that's a zero-sum game. I don't think one goes from one to the other instead of the other. I think the NFL can be vulnerable to football, more football. See, football as a sport is far and away number one in this country. And I get that. And Cerruti, for example, thinks I'm being too Texas-centric, too Southern-centric with that point of view.
Because you are.
I happen to think I'm in touch.
You were blaming me before the show that I'm caught up in the East Coast bias of loving basketball so much.
Your East Coast bias is making you think that basketball is any kind of real rivalry to football. Again, I love sports. I love NBA. I love college basketball. And heck, I love soccer. But I'm realistic about what's king in this country, and it's football. And while we know that ratings and popularity of the NFL are down, college football is on the rise. So what I think becomes the replacement for football is more football. And if Vince McMahon can provide more football, that's what the NFL should be concerned about. Distributing out, thinning out that audience, even if it's the biggest, finding alternatives, more hours in your weekend for football. Now, Nuno, what did he say? Spring, fall, he said what?
He said end of January, beginning of February. Okay.
Now, I misspoke earlier because I talked about spring versus fall and the role of Donald Trump in moving not the XFL, but the USFL from a spring league to a fall league. One of the things that many say helped contribute to the decline of the USFL. I misspoke there because what we're talking about here is the XFL, which was tried and failed in the 1990s. But speaking of Donald Trump, he was asked. Vince McMahon has already been asked in this press conference about the president and about politics, and he had this to say.
Hi, will President Trump support this in any way, even if it's just with statements? And can he speak to San Diego as a potential market?
I have no idea whether or not President Trump will support this. And let me, this is an opportunity for me to say that as far as our league is concerned, it'll have nothing to do with politics. Absolutely nothing, and nothing to do with social issues either. We're there to play football. We want really good football. And I think that's what fans want as well. When they tune in, I don't know that they want to be dealing with political issues and things of that nature. They want good football. That's what we're going to deliver.
Here's what I think. I think you take Vince McMahon as a billionaire who's created an entertainment product that, by the way, is also showing some ratings vulnerabilities in the WWE, but that is dominated for decades. And you take that guy who's learned from one failure with the XFL. You give him access to Colin Kaepernick, Robert Griffin III, Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, stars that are not in the NFL, You give him the chance to create a football platform from scratch, meaning it won't be encumbered with some of the issues that the NFL is. What is a catch? What isn't a catch? What role will the anthem play? What role will politics play? You give him the opportunity to do what he's done in the past, create entertainment, and all I'll tell you is this. There will be eyeballs in January and February and March hungry for this product.
You're talking about this being a threat to the NFL. The only way that it's a threat is if they poach the best players. And none of those guys you mentioned are the best players in the league. They're all guys that couldn't get jobs, and we'll exclude the Kaepernick things. I don't want to get into that. But the only way is if they get the Andrew Lucks or some of these elite stars to play like the USFL did back in the day when they signed guys like Steve Young.
Well, when I say threat, trust me, I don't mean overnight. I don't mean it. He doesn't mean it. I've started enough businesses to know that established brands have long runways and icebergs take a long time to melt. And the NFL is the biggest iceberg floating in the ocean. It'll take a long time for that one to melt or for anybody to come along and chip off some ice. But what I mean is the chipping can begin. The chipping, you have to realize when somebody's holding a pickaxe against your ice. And Vince McMahon, he's holding one. He's got one. I'm not saying that he's going to split it in half or that he's going to take the NFL down, but I'll promise you this. Somebody standing with a pickaxe at the iceberg, the NFL will see as a threat. They will see a competitor. No matter how much we scoff, no matter how much the failure was in the 90s, they'll see a billionaire who knows entertainment as a threat.
But he talked about safety and why that they were going to get the best doctors and all this stuff. But isn't that the opposite of what they should be going for? They should want the violence, right? They should want to embrace what the NFL has turned their back on.
Let's hear what he's saying. Let's see if he's talking about safety. What's he got, Nuno?
And we're going to be asking a lot more questions and listening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, that's the end. Oh, let's listen to the music. I expected something a little more dramatic. He's literally in a room by himself at a desk. The conference call is taking, the questions are coming over conference call. There's nobody there live, just him. And massive helmets with XFL on the back. Yeah, Rudy, I mean, yeah, you would think that one of the things that you would offer as your sparkly, shiny wrapping paper on your new league is no targeting rule, no big concussion protocol.
If you want to go back in, you can go back in.
You know, in the documentary, the 30 for 30 that ESPN did about that, it shows a hit that Jeff Brom, who's now the Purdue head coach, took when he was an XFL quarterback, and Brom was just leveled, sent to the hospital from the game in an ambulance. He comes back mid-game with a neck brace on. I don't know if you have this sound. They interview him. They say, "What are you doing back here coming from the hospital?" He said, "In order to answer your question, I want to ask you two questions. Number one, is this the XFL or not?" And the reporter's like, "Yeah, it's the XFL." He goes, "Number two, do I have a pulse or not? Then I will be here for the XFL." That's what you're going to get, hopefully, with the XFL. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Coming up straight ahead, Victor Cruz comes in the studio. Maybe Victor will go back for the XFL. Jerry Rice is saying that he's ready to play a little more football. I don't know. How about in the XFL? How about for Victor Cruz? It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Mike Golick here. You know, ADT, the #1 security company, can now help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go. Get started with the ADT Starter Kit professionally installed for only $49. Plus, you'll get ADT Go, the new family mobile safety app and service with 24/7 emergency response for free with any ADT security system. Go to ADT.com/podcast to learn more today.
Requires 36-month monitoring contract, QSP and EasyPay. Activation and early termination fees may apply. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com. Additional charge for ADT Go premium services after March 31st, 2018.
Breaking news here on SportsCenter. WWE founder and CEO Vince McMahon getting back into the football business.
As far as our league is concerned, it'll have nothing to do with politics. Absolutely nothing, and nothing to do with social issues either. We're there to play football. We want really good football.
If you're just joining us, Vince McMahon announcing the launch of the XFL. He says he wants really, really good football. And listen to this really quickly. He was asked about certain guys. Could some of these really, really good football players find their way to the XFL?
And he invites, be extended to players like Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick.
Well, I think this, that one of the things when I said the quality of human being is very important and just as important as the quality of the player, what I mean by that is you want someone who does not have any criminality whatsoever associated with them. And in the XFL, even if you have a DUI, you will not play in the XFL. So that would probably eliminate some of them. not all of them. If Tim Tebow wants to play, he could very well play.
Well, that does it for Johnny Manziel. He just sent Victor Cruz jumping in studio here with me, current. We just talked about this, NFL receiver Victor Cruz. By the way, okay, current. So what's the football plan, Victor?
The football plan is to give it one more shot next year, see if I land and stick anywhere, put my best foot forward, and then if not, I'll hang him up and I'll be on your Will Cain show. You got a seat for me here already. I'm already good.
You said hi to me when out there, so I guess you've seen me on TV before.
1,000%. I'm mainly just arguing with Stephen A. Smith a bunch of times. That's very entertaining.
So here's your opening for the Will Cain show. Just yell at me here for the next 10 minutes, and you got a seat.
And I'm in.
All right. But wait. So you said give it one more shot. What about the XFL?
XFL is 2020, correct? Is the starting year for this? So that gives me 2 years. I'll be 33. Probably not going to happen for me in the XFL. But I do find it interesting that Vince is coming back with the XFL. I think it's a better time for the XFL this time around. I don't think we were ready for it back then when it first came about. I think it's a different time now, but taking out guys that have gotten DUIs, that's like a quarter of the league.
Johnny didn't last 5 minutes. Johnny tweeted XFL 2020 and then at Vince McMahon it. And Vince McMahon minutes later says, "Yeah, nobody with DUIs." Short XFL career for Johnny.
Ouch.
Why do you just said now we're more ready for it than we were in the 90s? Why? What's changed?
I just think with social media and the way that you can become, I think the XFL is going to be. Remember guys like He Hate Me,
of course,
and guys that had it on those things are going to be huge in social media. Those little plays or things that they say. I think I remember those guys being mic'd up the whole game, and you can hear them talk. And hear them talk smack to each other and score touchdowns. And those are things people want to hear. I mean, do they want to hear them from guys in the XFL that they may or may not know? I think that's where they have to find the balance of guys that they know and guys that they don't know, and people will have to get to know. And how vested and interested are people in that in the XFL is going to be the question.
I think you're talking about are we in Victor Cruz in the studio on the Will Cain show. I actually think you're right that we're more ready for it now than we were in the 90s. I think much of society has become a little more WWE, and that's not all positive, trust me.
Yep.
But it's not all negative either. I mean, look, First Take is a lot of disagreement, but it's also a lot of fun and just kind of letting your ego fly.
Yep.
That's not all bad. You're bringing people to conversations that are entertaining. If Vince McMahon can make football, and I love the NFL, if he can make it entertaining, this might be the day and age for it. Like, just let it fly.
I agree. I just, Vince, is someone going to like Stone Cold stun somebody on the field? Like, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for somebody in the end zone. There's no holds barred in this. You're going to do whatever you want. Obviously there's going to be rules and pass interference and things like that. I hope. But I hope. You never know. But I think it's going to be a lot more fun for players to go out there, play some ball, and just be free and be themselves.
Okay, so let's take the XFL out of it. If Victor Cruz could have played for any franchise in the NFL, your choice. Everybody, let's make all the contract values the same. Okay.
Okay.
What franchise was it? You look back and go, "I wish I could have played for them."
Oh man, I think I played for them for 7 years. Man. I'm honest. I'm honest, yo. It's real. I mean, when you look at it all, right, and you look at where I came from, 15 minutes away from Giant Stadium, to have the ability to join the team as an undrafted free agent. Make the team, just fight for my life each and every week. Like, okay, I'm on the team, but I can be replaced at any time. Fight for my life, be on IR that rookie season, come back the next year, win a Super Bowl, and just have great years to come after that. It was just, you can't paint the picture any other way. You know what I mean? I did grow up a Cowboy fan.
There we go.
Due to my dad, I grew up, I had no choice. Like, there was no option for you when you grow up with my father. You become a Cowboy fan. And then we've always respected the Giants, of course, but obviously as I became an adult and joined the organization, it was a different story.
Okay, so now that you got on my good side with your little Cowboys thing, that was probably just gratuitous. I'll extend the same kind of flattery to you. I love stories like yours. Okay, it's one of the reasons I love Tony Romo. If anybody's ever watched, they know I do. It's one of the reasons I love Tom Brady. I love against the odds stories. I love you're told no, you're told you can't do it, you are going against all odds. I love the story, Victor, of Jerry Jones and Bill Parcells cornering Tony Romo in the locker room when they know he's the quarterback of the future and trying to get him on a below-right deal, right? They know, let's get him in locked-in contract, and he has the wherewithal to stand up to two Hall of Famers in that moment. Was there a moment in your career where you're like, I've been told no 1,000 times. The odds are stacked against me, but now I got it. Now it's mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was, so my rookie year, I did great preseason, the whole thing. I get injured though. I tore my hamstring or something like that, so I ended up on injured reserve. That next year comes around, I don't have the same type of preseason that I had the year before. It was kind of, it was good, it wasn't great, and it wasn't bad. So after I made the team, Coach Coughlin brings me up to his office. He says, hey, look, man, we got some guys that we're looking at on this waiver wire, so if you're not going to be your same self from a year before, a year prior, that same type of spark, that same type of guy, we're going to go out here and look for somebody else. He flat out said that to me. And I was like, okay. And I went in the locker room and was like, I got to flip the switch. Something has to change. I went out there and just performed and just stuck to my guns and made play after play after play. And then, week 3 came around that second year, and I had 3 catches for 100+ yards and 2 touchdowns against the Eagles. And then it just kind of took off from there.
That's awesome, man. Those are the stories. Are you going to be on Ballers anymore? What's the story?
That's the plan. I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it. They're filming as we speak. So the faster I wrap up this show, Will, the faster I can get to The Rock and Ballers and make all this happen.
Yeah, you one of the Rock's clients or his buddy? Well, I forget the name of it.
I was one of the Rock's clients initially.
You go.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. It's been fun having you. You're welcome to come in, hang out whenever you want. Love to have you in the family.
Appreciate it, Will. Thanks for having me, man.
Victor Cruz in studio on the Will Cain Show. Straight ahead, we're going to check back in with Vince McMahon and the XFL. And plus, I want to tell you why Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds should never be in the Hall of Fame. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. No way that you can allow Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Last night, a new class was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it did not include Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, thankfully for now. But their percentages are growing, and it's quite possible that in the next couple of years, those two guys could find themselves alongside the greats of the sport. And the bottom line is this. If you cheated, if you took performance-enhancing drugs, if you took steroids, if you took human growth hormone, you do not belong in the Hall of Fame. It's as easy as that. In the course of your career, when you chose to put into your body substances that are against the rules, that gave you an unfair advantage, that altered the size not only of your muscles but the size of your head, then you have not just cheated everybody else in the sport, that you clearly did. Every pitcher you win against, every position player you beat out, every roster spot you took from someone else, you cheated along the way. See, sports is a zero-sum game. Sports isn't capitalism. Sports isn't business. Capitalism and business are great because they're not zero-sum. For every win, there doesn't have to be a loss in business. That's how we get wealthier day by day, year by year, decade by decade in society. It's how air conditioners end up costing $30 at Walmart. It's how everyone has a smartphone in their hand because wealth builds exponentially upon itself. But sports is a zero-sum game. For every winner, there's a loser. At the end of the football game, one team wins, one team loses. When you win a spot on the team, somebody else doesn't get that spot. When you hit a home run, a pitcher has lost the battle. So every time you cheated, every time you put something in your body, you cheated somebody else out of a spot, out of a win, out of a strikeout, out of a contract that rewarded all those things. You took money out of other people's pockets and put it into yours. It's tantamount to theft. Not only did you cheat everyone else in the sport, you cheated yourself. See, throughout your entire career, you got the fame, you got the money, you got the millions, you got the all-star games, but there's got to be one thing we can reserve. One thing. And it might just be the most hallowed grounds of the sport's history, the Hall of Fame, that we can reserve and say, you know what? In this one place, in this one building, we can punish someone for cheating. In this one space, we can keep it to those that are honored. Now, I understand it's not pure. I understand not everybody in the Hall of Fame got there completely, purely, free from cheating. But I don't live in this world that apparently so many others do, that if everyone else cheats, then it's okay for you to cheat. Or if you let a few cheaters in, or they cheat by scuffing the ball, or deflating a football, it's the same as taking a PED. It's nuts to me, by the way, that the smarter we get in society and the more pompous we get, I understand that's coming from me, the less we're able to distinguish between things, the less we're able to see degrees. As though jaywalking and murder are the same. The enlightened position in 2018 is to not see the differences between those two things. Well, they're both against the law, and they're both really, really bad. So, therefore, we should punish them similarly. We should treat them the same. Jaywalking and murder. I mean, who are you? What are you saying? Jaywalking is not bad? And if you think I'm making an absurd argument or I'm distorting something else, you ought to actually check out Bill Maher from his show the last week on Real Time. He talked about it, that we no longer can see degrees. Maher's rant was on the Me Too movement, the sexual harassment movement, the sexual assault movement. He talked about Matt Damon and the way Matt Damon got destroyed in public for pointing out that groping and rape are not the same. They're both bad, and both should be condemned. But if we can't see the difference in degrees in things, we're no better than a 5-year-old. Let me change that. A 3-year-old. People can see degrees. They should be able to see degrees. So the fact that Gaylord Perry scuffed baseballs doesn't mean you got to let Barry Bonds in for taking the cream, the clear, HGH. They're not the same. So why would you do that? Why would you say someone who took a drug that fundamentally changed his body, fundamentally changed the product on the field, fundamentally changed the way he played, and say we're going to honor that? Why would you do that? 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. I'd love to hear from you. How is it that somebody who does the wrong thing should receive all the same benefits in life as somebody who chooses to do the right thing? I hate to bring the kids into it, you know. It's an easy way to win an argument. What about the kids? What about the kids? But, I mean, honestly, what message do you send children? You really shouldn't cheat, but if you do, you're going to get all the same benefits that if you didn't cheat. In the end, we're all going to look past it, and we're only going to measure your greatness, how far your home runs went and how many you hit. If you cheat, you really get to the same place as the guy who didn't. If you cheat, you'll be in the Hall of Fame, just like the guy that worked hard his entire career against the odds, like Victor Cruz we just had in studio. What are you telling competitors, children, everybody? You're telling them none of it matters. Nothing matters. Everyone's doing it, so nothing is wrong. Scuffed baseballs and steroids are the same. You're creating the obvious conclusion there's nothing against the rules. Mark in Missouri. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Will. Thanks for taking my call, bud.
Yep.
Love the show. I just had a question. This is a lot of the, I guess, opinions I get from other people about the PED issue. I'm against the PEDs. I'm on your side with that. I don't believe they should be in the Hall of Fame. But my question is, before Tommy John surgery came about, the question I would get is, you know, those players that are in the Hall of Fame now before Tommy John's, or they had to quit their career early because they couldn't have the surgery, but now the pitchers now get to have Tommy John surgery and extend their career, their stats are better than the ones previous that had to cut their career short. So advancement in those areas, you know, is that not the same as performance enhancing? It's a performance enhancing surgery. Does that not qualify under the PEDs? That was my question. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you bet, Mark. No, it doesn't. Because, by the way, the comparison to Tommy John would be a really good one if what we were debating was whether or not we should allow PEDs, whether or not we should legalize PEDs, whether or not they are a net benefit to the player with very little cost and risk to the player. And that's an interesting debate. You know, it's like in Limitless with Bradley Cooper. What if you could take a smart pill with no downside? What would be wrong with taking it? But in the end, we have rules. Tommy John surgery is not against the rules. PEDs are against the rules. They drastically affect how you play. So does Tommy John. But these are against the rules. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Elle Duncan jumping in studio straight ahead to hang out. Keep this conversation going.
This is the Will Cain Podcast on ESPN Radio.
It's really pretty simple, I think. If you cheat, you don't get to go to the Hall of Fame. But when I say when you cheat, let's not just be dummies about this. Let's not pretend like everything's the same. Let's not pretend like scuffing baseballs and taking HGH are all the same. Like, what is it when we can't see nuance anymore? We can't see degrees. All we can see is black and white. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. SportsCenter anchor Elle Duncan just walked into a buzzsaw a little bit because I am worked up.
I see. You were starting to get worked up when I was watching you over in Building 4, and then I had a brief conversation, and I walked in. I see you're still fired up, so I'm ready for this. This is great.
What did you think when you were watching Building 4? Do you disagree or you agree with me?
Well, are you talking about the XFL or baseball?
Let's start with baseball.
Yeah, okay, baseball. I do agree with you in that there is certain degrees of cheating. Is that was your point, right? Yeah. I am also of the, I'm not going to lie, Will, I'm of the, let all these dudes roid up and let's have a good old fashioned home run derby because the heyday of the roid era was really when I was kind of coming up. I played baseball my whole entire life, and there was nothing more exciting than Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds, and I'm okay with it. I know that sounds awful. It's America's pastime. You guys are a bunch of cheaters. You shouldn't be in the hall, whatever. But let these guys do what they need to do, and let's have an enjoyable time watching them try to hit moonshots constantly. I'm okay with it.
But here's the thing. I don't have a problem with that. I don't disagree with that. If you want to have the all-drug Olympics, if you want to remember that Saturday Night Live skit back 100%. In the day, it's like, take everything you want, boys. See anything you got. Pull your arms out of their sockets. It's great. I'm okay with that. But the thing is, when you have rules, the point of the rule is to keep everybody on an equal playing field.
Okay.
And so when Barry Bonds takes PEDs or Roger Clemens, takes HGH, it's not just that he's enhancing his own performance, but he's taking something away from somebody else. He's taking something away from his competitor. Maybe the guy he's pitching against. He's taking something away in terms of a roster spot from somebody else who's trying to make it on that team when Roger Clemens is 37 years old. He's cheating other people. It's only at the end when we say, well, you don't just get to cheat other people. You have to have cheated yourself, too, in some capacity. And it might just be in the Hall of Fame because we're not taking your money away. We're not taking your fame away. We're not taking your stats and your all-star games away. Just the Hall of Fame.
But I think in particular, when you talk about someone like a Barry Bonds, and whenever this conversation comes up about Bonds and even a Clemens, the unfortunate part is that most people seem to think that these guys would have been who they were without the roids, right? They could have still done and accomplished and been, transformative and generational type players without them. And I think that there is a certain degree of people who say they never admitted to doing them. You can't put Mark McGwire. There are plenty of baseball guys out there who have never admitted to doing them. But based on stories and reports and whatnot, we know that they probably did. They're going to be in the Hall of Fame. These guys never admitted that they did them. So why then do you say that they can't go in based on the fact that they never said anything? And also, do you think, Will, that Barry Bonds could have still been in the Hall of Fame had not for this cloud of drug use? Was he good enough to do it on his own?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
so do you not then give him at least that to say the guy was good enough to do it on his own, whether he did or not, he was good enough to do it on his own?
No, in fact, I think it indicts him more.
Really?
I think if you're good enough to do it on your own and then you still chose to take the wrong path, it's even more of an indictment of you. You bring up one interesting point. What about the honesty of it all? Is it just that you won't or will admit to it? Here's the scenario that I think is really difficult. What about a guy who gets busted for PEDs early in his career, cleans up, goes on to have an amazing career for the latter half or latter 3/4 of his career, clean? How do we view that guy? See, the thing is, Bonds and Clemens never paid their penalty, never did. And I think that's different than a guy who paid his penalty and went on to play clean.
So you're saying, so for an example, you're saying a Ryan Braun. If he was to suddenly become some Hall of Fame type player, you'd be able to overlook the fact that he admittedly did.
I think you'd have a better case because he would have at least already paid his penalty. Bob in Milwaukee, you're on the Will Cain Show. What's up, Bob?
Hey, Will. Love the show so far.
Thanks, man.
You guys actually covered both my points so far. What I was going to talk about these guys not getting to the Hall is how they stuck with their lies about doing the drugs. And, a big part of getting into a Hall of Fame is integrity. And these guys sticking to those lies, their integrity was shot. Here in Milwaukee, obviously I'm a Brewers fan. With Ryan Braun, the most disappointing thing about his whole ordeal was that he lied.
It always is the lie. Isn't that the famous saying? Thanks for the call, Bob. It's not the crime, but it's the cover-up, Elle. That's the real sin.
So when David Ortiz goes in, what's your argument going to be? Because he'll get in.
Yeah.
What's the argument then?
Well,
never admitted to it. It was all speculative.
Well, this is the other part. Listen, I'm willing to admit the difficulties I have. It's I am clear that I don't think if you have used performance enhancing drugs, you shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Establishing who has is very difficult. Pudge Rodriguez is in the Hall of Fame. He was named by Jose Canseco.
Yeah.
Is that enough? Is the fact
not even just named? Pudge legitimately came back and had lost like 100 pounds of muscle.
You seen Barry Bonds lately?
Yeah, right. Like overnight, Pudge was a different person.
Yeah, I mean, the burden of proof thing is one of the hardest parts of this because a lot of it is speculation. A lot of it is naming of names. And even in the Mitchell report, it's, this trainer said this about this guy. And look, regardless of the crime, accusation is not enough for me. You got to have some proof. But I do know this, if you've satisfied whatever burden of proof that we are going to establish, you don't get in. If you've satisfied whatever that is, you don't get in. I just can't accept this place where what I don't like, Elle, is everybody did it, so it's okay. PED's the same as scuffing the ball. If Gaylord Perry's in, size 9 head gets in. I'm not into this moral equivalency. There are no rules. There are no principles. Hey, man, it's just baseball. Let's have fun. You cheat on the golf course, I probably don't want to be in business with you.
Sure. Could you say that it's cheating, though? I'm playing devil's advocate here, Will.
Okay.
Could you say that it's cheating, though, if the league didn't enforce it? If there was no clear-cut drug use policy at the time when these guys were using, is it cheating?
It was 91. That's when the policy came into effect.
Okay.
They didn't get spankings until 2003.
Right.
So I knew the rules,
so it's like,
Mom.
It's like, don't do
but
it.
You weren't spanking me at the time.
Correct. It's like if your mom was like, you have a curfew, but if you continued to break it, there would be no punishment, consequences, or repercussions. You would continue to break your curfew.
Yeah, but you still knew the rules. Let me ask you a question. If you were sitting in a press conference and this went down, would it offend you?
I'll take our next question from Darren Ravel with ESPN.
Hello, Dan.
Vince, hey, how are you?
Did you hear that? Did you catch that?
Hello, Dan. Actually, it wouldn't bother me at all. Will, most people that I actually work with around here think my name is Elle. So
ELLE.
And I am too non-confrontational to actually address it. So I'll just continue to answer by Elle, and then at some point it's become too long and I can't correct them and tell them that's not my name. But so no, that wouldn't bother me at all. I get called by the wrong name all the time. What about you?
Nah, it's always Will. It's hard to want to mess up.
It
would offend me. It would offend me, Vince.
Really?
Get it straight. I'd correct him.
Really?
You saw this over there. You pumped for the XFL?
No.
No?
I'm more pumped for the 30 for 30 on the reboot of how unsuccessful it was. Here's the thing for me, Will, with the XFL is Vince McMahon coming out and saying, okay, recognizing the climate, which is that you can't have these over-sexualized cheerleaders anymore. That is not going to work in today's climate. And that you can't have this free-for-all, everybody gets hit, let's take each other heads off, like this is going to be the league for men like it was back in the day. That's not going to fly nowadays either. So understanding that, he then comes and says, well, this is going to be a family-friendly league with none of the gimmicks. Well, then what's the point? What is the point?
All right, let's do this. I'll tell you the point straight ahead.
Okay.
And we can also decide if we actually believe that.
Okay.
It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app with Elle Duncan. Looking for your next great hire but short on time? You just need the right tools, smarter tools. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 job boards with just one click. Then they actively look for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Will. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Will. You ready for Vince McMahon? You ready for the XFL? You ready for the WWE? The NFL better be ready. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio. What's up, everyone? Will Cain here. Support for the Will Cain podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Will. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Breaking news here on SportsCenter. WWE founder and CEO Vince McMahon getting back into the football business. The main challenge of the XFL, people at the end of the day wanted real football. Can real football be had with a base of players who are not NFL players?
America wasn't ready for the XFL back then, but now, when football has been forced by science to actually feel like it's going soft?
Hanging out in studio with Elle Duncan, SportsCenter's Elle Duncan in studio giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Yesterday we had this conversation about the most tortured fan bases, right? And I said the Vikings fans, Minnesota fans, sneaky tortured. 6 NFC conference championships in a row, dating back to the 70s that they lost. And of course, in the 70s, 4 Super Bowls lost. Mm-hmm. And I find myself sitting here with you today, who considers herself among the most tortured of fan bases.
Yeah.
Which is what?
Just Georgia. Is that a fan base? Everything and anything that's ever come out of Georgia. That includes the Braves, the Bulldogs, the Hawks, the Falcons. Now, my team self-admittedly is the Denver Broncos. My family's from Denver, but they moved to Atlanta and had me. But I know all too well how tortured all of Atlanta sports are. It's bad. Will, I mean, honestly, like I think people only think of like 28-3, right? As why people don't care about sports in Atlanta. But as I've told you before, this is about so many things. Trading away Brett Favre, trading away Dominique Wilkins, going up 2 games in the Bronx, and then losing 4 straight in the World Series to the Yankees, and then getting swept a few years later, and then having your face of your franchise arrested for dog fighting. And it's just like
it's starting to add up here. Yeah, it's true.
It's like it's one thing after another, and then Tua comes in, and like what? I mean, it's pretty bad. So we need a win.
Yeah, every fan base has these things, but you know what? You're right. I mean, I was sat here as you were telling those stories. I was thinking about 1 strike away twice for the Texas Rangers. 2 separate World Series lost in a row, Cardinals and Giants. Everybody has them, but you're right. Once you got to the whole face of the franchise in jail for dogfighting thing, I started to be won over. Yeah, you guys are pretty tortured.
Right? And then, well, even before that, you finally make a Super Bowl. You finally go. You're going to face the Broncos in the Super Bowl. And then your star safety gets arrested for prostitution the night before. It's like, It's just always something when it comes to Atlanta. On top of the fact that, like, Cleveland probably gets the most attention for being a tortured fan base, even though they're now champions. And so they've got the same amount of championships as a city that Atlanta does. But you add insult to injury by saying no one in Atlanta, no one in Georgia cares about sports, which isn't fair and which is really untrue, largely. So people criticize the fan base, and then they also have to deal with the fact that their product continues to let them down.
We were just talking about this. Did you guys hear the story about what Vikings fans are doing to get even with Eagles fans? Apparently, a lot of Vikings fans had an unpleasant experience in Philadelphia. Some beer cans being thrown at them. No, Philly fans, you wouldn't do that. And so Vikings fans are getting even by signing up as Uber drivers in Minnesota for the Super Bowl and have vowed to drop Eagles fans off at the wrong place.
Right.
Take them to the wrong location.
Correct. Which at first is petty, which I love, and also hilarious, but on site, that's kidnapping. So I'm like, don't, because your butt hurt, don't allow yourself to catch a felony case. You guys, you didn't get, it doesn't come down to a play or two. You got absolutely embarrassed and they won and you need to move on. And I understand that you're upset, but what do you want?
No, I love the ingenuity. I love the ideas. Good brainstorming session, Vikings fans. Really, you sit around and go, how do we get them? Love the brains. No bad ideas here, folks. Let's just put everything on the table. No bad ideas. And whoever came up with that, cool. Awesome. I hope you had an Elle in the room. Hey, boys, this is kidnapping.
This is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this, guys. Not worth it. Just sports.
All right, Peyton in Alabama. What's up? You're on the Will Cain Show.
Hey, what's up, Will? Big fan here.
Thanks, man.
I was going to go back to talking about the steroids and Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. You guys haven't mentioned Babe Ruth yet. And there was this thing where he said he admitted to using some type of performance-enhancing drugs, and also he got in trouble for cork bats. And he only got in trouble a handful of times. Who knows how many times he actually did that.
Do you think that a cork bat and HGH are of equal value? Equal condemnation?
I don't, but if he got away, what if he hit all his home runs with a cork bat?
It would be, we should probably erase Babe Ruth from the record books. We should probably pretend like he never existed. Babe Ruth, gone. Let me ask you something else. Thanks for the call. I said this. I want to ask this to you because I think this was I don't know if you heard it. Did you hear this? Okay. First of all, I don't like hey, Tom Brady might have deflated footballs rebuttal. Sure. The Bill Belichick might have spied rebuttal.
Right.
Because I think you can think in degrees. I think you can distinguish a scuffed baseball from HGH. I think we can do this, folks. I just don't think we're asking too much. It's not too hard. We can do this.
Sure.
And we have to recognize that PEDs are far over the line. They're not close to the line. They're not a little over the line. They're not towing it. They're far over the line.
Sure.
Everybody knows that is cheating. Everybody knows it's well over the line. And I compared this, and Bill Maher did this on Real Time this past week. He said one of the problems right now with the Me Too movement is that, for example, with Matt Damon, he got crushed for suggesting that there's a difference between a grope and a rape.
Sure.
He did not say one was okay. Both are bad. But we have to be evolved enough to understand there are degrees of things and make use our judgment from there. And that's where I come back to on this PEDs debate. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. First of all, I would say, what did PEDs look like in the 1920s? Like he was huffing pine tar. It wasn't the clear. I'm just saying.
In the 70s, it was greenies, to be fair. It was amphetamines, though.
Sure. But in Babe Ruth days, But I totally agree with you in that there is, getting busted using some pine tar on the rim of your cap is not going to disqualify you from the Hall of Fame, like being kind of thrown into this picture of using performance-enhancing drugs. And it shouldn't be. Not all crimes are created equal. That's just the truth of it. But again, I go back to, the correlation of, these guys were never actually found guilty of doing anything. Right? They didn't admit to it. It's still all speculative. And if we're trying this in the court of public opinion, which is what the Hall of Fame is, right? But if you were trying this in a court of law, there's reasonable doubt. There's actual reasonable doubt that they did these things because you cannot prove emphatically that they did. And so if you believe that these are two of the most talented people to ever step out onto a field and lace them up, I think that the speculation alone should not disqualify them from the ability to do it. But I turn this around and ask you, because we just heard your caller say, call and say that this is about integrity. But the whole argument that I keep hearing on both sides is that the Hall of Fame is not about integrity. It's supposed to be about strictly how you performed and what you did on the field and not whether these guys were likable or whatnot. So do you liken a Curt Schilling, who is an awful person, right, with his accomplishments, to someone who allegedly used performance-enhancing drugs but was never busted doing it? Are they one and the same to you?
No. I have a couple points to make. Number one, I agree with one thing you said. The Hall of Fame is a place of honor. It's not the story of baseball. Some people say that. How do you tell the story of baseball without telling what happened in the 90s and the 2000s? How do you tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds? You can do it. You can have a wing where you tell about this gap in history. You don't have to make a bust or put a plaque up for these guys and treat them the same way you do Joe Morgan or somebody else who did it the right way. You don't have to act like these two people got there through the same path. And you bring up Curt Schilling. I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I think that things that happen outside of the game of baseball until, perhaps criminal stuff is brought into the picture should not affect. It should be a judgment about who you were as a baseball player to your team on the field. Now, there's probably a threshold there. Does OJ belong? Should he still be a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame? He's technically not guilty. Generally, I would say whoever you are outside of the game should not impact how you were viewed inside the game. But there is a threshold. There is. I have to say. And your burden of proof thing is the hardest thing for me to respond to. It's really hard. Because I am a firm believer accusations are not enough in society.
Again, court of public opinion. I mean, all signs can point to yes. But again, if he doesn't admit it and there isn't actual and clear evidence that they did it, then we're back at the same time. Because the point is, Will, if there was no speculation involved in this, there wouldn't be a debate here about whether Barry Bonds or Clemens should get in at all. It'd be, okay, they cheated and no. Thank you for your contributions. You were really fun to freaking watch. What a shame that you ruined your career. But absolutely not. The fact that there is all that speculation is why this is still even a debate all these years later.
Okay, I got to get out of here. Do you want to hang out a little more?
Absolutely.
Okay, I like you.
Kicking it. I like you too, Will.
The Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. Let's talk to Elle. Let's talk to you folks about whether or not Joe Thomas, potential Hall of Famer, is right. Should the Browns sign Kirk Cousins? Should they pass on a quarterback in the draft? It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Mike Golick here. You know, ADT, the #1 security company, can now help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go. Get started with the ADT Starter Kit professionally installed for only $49. Plus, you'll get ADT Go, the new family mobile safety app and service with 24/7 emergency response for free with any ADT security system. Go to ADT.com/podcast to learn more today.
Requires 36-month monitoring contract, QSP and Easy Pay. Activation and early termination fees may apply. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com. Additional charge for ADT Go premium services after March 31st, 2018.
UCLA quarterbacks Josh Rosen and USC signal caller Sam Darnold have declared for the coming draft.
Both of them have some questions, I think. Sam's relates to ball security, and Rosen's anytime your team doesn't win much at that position, you wonder about whether he can elevate a team.
If I had to win a game tomorrow, I would take Josh Rosen. If I had to bet on the next 10 years, I would bet on Sam Darnold.
If I have, the #1 overall pick, and I need a quarterback, and I'm going Baker Mayfield.
The NBA All-Star Draft just wound up. LeBron James just tweeted, "Yo, Steph Curry, that was fun. Definitely should have been televised." Shoulder shrug, hashtag All-Star Draft. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio on the ESPN Up. SportsCenter's Elle Duncan hanging out with us in studio. You know Kevin Love was picked last. You know it.
Yeah, of course he was. Fittingly so.
No, Elle, that's
I know, the
wrong.
poor guy. I know. He's the scapegoat, yo. You know, Tom Brady's the GOAT, and Kevin Love is the scapegoat. He's the whipping boy. I think who should have been picked last was probably Al Horford. Don't at me, Boston, not because I don't love Al Horford. And like I said, he is key in a championship run. But 13-7 is so boring in the All-Star. I'm going to give you 13 points and 7 rebounds. That's not what anybody cares about that. He's picked last because he's just an easy target.
Kevin
is a very easy target, Will. No?
Yes, I agree. And
Look at the sad puppy dog eyes that you've got just talking about Kevin Love. Like he's some sad charity, but oh, poor Kevin. He's been picked last, probably.
He's been picked on so much. Years and years of this.
Yeah.
You said it. He is the scapegoat, which means, by the way, almost by definition, it's unearned. It's not fair. It's not right. Don't do this to Kevin Love. He doesn't deserve your blame consistently, LeBron. He doesn't deserve it. And if I'm Kevin, I'm out. I'm done. Peace. Quit. Wait,
quit the league or quit the Cavs?
No, the Cavs.
Okay, I was like, oh my God.
Don't let him chase you out of basketball, Kevin. Don't let him chase you out of your profession. No, I mean, think about if you walked around the office all day and everybody's having a bad day and they're like, it's Elle's fault.
Yeah.
It's always Elle's fault.
Wouldn't be. Listen, I have a Twitter.
You want to tell everybody?
I've been blamed for worse.
You want to tell everybody what you just asked me in the commercial break? Elle just turned to me in the commercial break.
Yeah, Katie Nolan is on highly questionable right now.
Yeah, you looked up. I didn't look at the TV. You said, "Hey, what do you think of Katie?" And I said, "I'm a big fan, but he's being a punk." I didn't use the word punk.
Yeah,
and you looked at me with the saucerest eyes you've ever seen. Wow, kept coming strong. I thought you said KD.
Yeah, like Kevin Durant.
KD, no. Not KT.
Yeah. It's that is a really strong take. I think KD's pretty cool. I mean,
I was like, no,
so you think that
I don't know Katie. I don't know Katie. I know KD.
Not so you think Kevin Durant is acting like more of a punk than Kevin Love, who continues to let these dudes use him as a punching bag and refuses to stand up for himself? You're a grown-ass man.
Oh,
stand
this
up
is a
for
hot
yourself.
Take.
I'm just saying,
You're asking for it?
Yes.
I don't think you want to take that logic everywhere it takes you. That's not true. KD, not Katie Nolan, KD he's being a punk. I'm a huge KD fan. In fact, I think I'm one of the pioneers of the KD is suppressing LeBron take. But KD he's got his 4th ejection of the season. He outpaces most teams in the NBA on ejections. And he's trying to prove something. I don't know what it is. That he's tough, that he's angry, that he's not taking it anymore. I don't think Kevin Love's path is to follow KD, to start getting mad. You're right. Maybe he shouldn't take it from LeBron. It's coming from LeBron. He shouldn't take it from LeBron so much. But it's clear it's not going to change. Love's the one that needs to be asking for a trade.
Is that what you think?
Yeah, that's what I think. Yes.
He should be the one in the position to ask for the trade. I agree with you. The problems with the Cavs don't rest purely on Kevin Love's shoulders. But, my mom used to say it to me when I would get punked on the playground, right? When I'd let these girls push me around. She was like, "Mama didn't raise no punk." The quickest way they target you because they know you're just going to keep taking it on the chin. And I'll agree with you in that I think all the criticism of Kevin Durant over the last year is why we're seeing this like snappy, angry kind of Kevin Durant, right? Like, I think that he isn't handling being the quote unquote villain that he's been painted over the last year or so for choosing to go and join, the Warriors. But there's got to be a happy medium between getting a bunch of technicals and taking out on the refs and just continually letting people use you as a whipping boy.
The Will Cain Show is reminding you that you can watch all 3 hours of the show on ESPN News. I didn't really anticipate Elle Duncan coming here and out alpha mailing me on something. Speaking of Cleveland, by the way, I want to get your response to this. Here's Joe Thomas of the Cleveland Browns.
We have $118 million in cap space, so we got plenty of money to do whatever we want. But I would actually sign Kirk Cousins, and then I would use the 1st and 4th pick on the best players available, probably Saquon Barkley and one of the defensive players. So all of a sudden, you're a heck of a lot better immediately overnight.
There you go. Cleveland passed once again on a quarterback in the first round. Instead, signed Kirk Cousins.
So here's my thing. I'm not a Kirk Cousins fan. I'm not. I think Kirk Cousins is average. I think he's a really average quarterback, and I think that he is the reason that we have all this Kirk Cousins love is really speaks to how mediocre the position of quarterback is right now. You've got the Hall of Famers and then everyone else. However, here's the logic in what I like about Joe Thomas is that I actually think that the Browns don't need to spend another first-round pick. I think the problem with the Browns is they keep bringing in quarterbacks for 15 minutes onto terrible teams, seeing if it works, saying never mind, and pulling the plug too soon. Deshaun Kaiser was a project. He was a project that everyone knew was going to be a project. So why not try and develop him, use your 1st and 4th round picks to get the best available, to get someone like a Saquon Barkley who could be a game changer on your offense or at least take some of the pressure off Deshaun, and try and develop him. Imagine that logic, Will. Trying to develop a quarterback and giving him more than like 14 games before you trash him.
All right. I think
so if you bring Kirk Cousins in for that reason, Will, you bring him in for a couple of years, but that's the problem, is Kirk Cousins is going to demand a 3 or 4 or 5 year contract. He's going to get a $100 million contract for being super average.
All right.
Bring in Alex Smith.
I was going to say goodbye to you, but I can't run from these opinions. I think you're completely wrong that the Browns should give up on quarterbacks sooner, not take longer to give up on them, burn through them quicker, and sign Kirk Cousins. I'll get into all of that. Maybe you'll be here. Maybe you won't. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. You just laid out your case that the Cleveland Browns should, in fact, give quarterbacks more time. Give Deshaun Kaiser more than 14 games. Let them develop. Put some time into grooming a quarterback. Is that fair? Was that your argument?
Yeah, I'm being specific to Deshaun Kaiser, yes. Not Brady Quinn, Deshaun Kaiser.
And this is all in response to Joe Thomas, future Hall of Fame left tackle Joe Thomas of the Cleveland Browns, who said this on Golic and Wingo.
We have $118 million in cap space, so we got plenty of money to do whatever we want. But I would actually sign Kirk Cousins, and then I would use the 1st and 4th pick on the best players available, probably Saquon Barkley and one of the defensive players. So all of a sudden, you're a heck of a lot better immediately overnight.
Here's what I would do, Elle. First of all, I would do what Joe Thomas suggested in part. I would sign Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith. I agree with you, by the way. There's not a major difference between the two. Trading for Alex Smith or signing Kirk Cousins, they're both in the league average realm, somewhere between, let's call it, 12 and 18.
There you go.
So it's probably cheaper to trade for Alex Smith than to spend the $25+ million a year that it's going to cost to secure Kirk Cousins. Right. But either way, get yourself one of these guys. And what I'm going to call that is my insurance policy. I'm taking Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith as my insurance policy. But this is where I disagree with Joe Thomas. I then also spend either the 1st and 4th pick on one of these quarterbacks, be it Josh Allen if you're in love with him, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, or even Baker Mayfield. Because this is my view. Quarterbacks are the lotto tickets of the NFL. You need one. You gotta have one. I don't want to hear about the Jacksonville Jaguars and Blake Bortles or the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Foles. These are the exceptions that prove the rule. You want to win a Super Bowl? You need a Tom Brady. You need a Peyton Manning. You need these guys to win a Super Bowl. And to get one, you're largely playing the lotto. You're casting tickets out there, throwing dice, hoping it comes up 7 for you. Is Sam Darnold going to be that guy? I don't know. And truthfully, you don't either. Not just you, Elle. I'm talking about you, Cleveland Browns. The Philadelphia Eagles cast their dice. They took their lotto ticket on Carson Wentz, and it struck. But it's well over 50% of the time, these things come up bust, right? So what you do is you buy that lotto ticket. You have to, because that secures you for the next 15 years. But the insurance policy is getting one of these league average quarterbacks in the door to give you consistent quarterback play if your lotto ticket goes bust. I understand the catch in my game is that you're probably not going to sign Kirk Cousins, and then he's going to say, by the way, it's cool if you go ahead and draft my replacement. But sometimes business is tough. And so that may make Alex Smith your guy because he's used to it. The truth is what the Kansas City Chiefs just did is the right play. Have a solid quarterback and draft a lotto ticket, big upside as his replacement. That's what the Browns need to do.
Okay, but I take you back to, and I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment because I know that this is the most recent case, but I take you back to a year ago when everybody wanted to trade Jared Goff away for a bag of hot fries. I mean, he was trash. He was a bust. It was awful. But look what a coaching change did for him. He then went from the laughing stock of the league and the next Ryan Leaf to being the captain and head of the best offense, or at least the best scoring offense we saw all year long. One of the most exciting teams who, yes, woefully unimpressed in the playoffs, but that was an NFL defense, or a Falcons defense rather, that looked very inspired. I just think that to say that Deshaun Kaiser with absolutely, it's like the blind leading the blind in Cleveland. And I'm not saying that sitting behind an Alex Smith or a Kirk Cousins is going to turn you into a Tom Brady. I'm not saying that. But what some coaching changes could do and putting some people around someone to try to facilitate and grow someone and develop a quarterback, I think is worth. Deshaun Kaiser had all the tools coming out of college, but everyone knew he wasn't ready. Sam Darnold doesn't look to be ready. The guy that everyone seems to think is possibly going to be the most ready out of this crop of quarterbacks, depending on who you ask, is Josh Rosen.
Baker Mayfield.
See, but it depends on who you ask, too, because a lot of people think Baker Mayfield isn't going to be ready.
I know. Todd
Maybe
McShay says he's not looking good, but I read other guys saying he's the most impressive this week at Senior Bowl practices.
Listen, I respect Trevor Maddich more than anyone here and his opinion. That man knows college football like the back of his hands. He has Baker Mayfield rated as number one. Like, he's got him as the most ready to step in and take over a pro-style offense. I just think that the Browns, what they've been doing over and over, it's not Deshaun Kaiser's fault that they don't know how to draft and that they keep whiffing at drafting quarterbacks and what order they should draft them at. And I think that the whole adage, the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over. They keep doing this. They've had 100 million quarterbacks and it just doesn't work. So maybe try something a little different. Bring it. Go for Eli Manning. See if you can get him on a couple of years. You can't tell me that Deshaun Kaiser couldn't sit behind Eli Manning and learn a thing or two from Eli Manning and then see what you've got in the next year or so with a stopgap quarterback.
But I think the hole in your argument is that a bunch of Cleveland Browns quarterbacks who've been given up on too soon aren't lighting the league up on other teams right now. Now, in Los Angeles, you talked about Jared Goff, and I talked about this all offseason, mostly hanging out with Russillo here for the summer and the spring last year. And it's true, the Rams did nothing with Goff, and that was a Rams problem. You know what else is going on in the league right now? Former Rams quarterbacks are doing great everywhere. Case Keenum in Minnesota, Nick Foles in Philadelphia. You look around the league and you're like, look at all these guys who weren't good enough with Jeff Fisher, but apparently are for everybody else. What I think is this. The Browns have just been missing on guys. They've been getting the wrong guys. Not failing to develop them, but getting the wrong guys. And I asked Louis Riddick this. I asked Bill Polian this. I asked a lot of people this one question, which I love. When do you know? When do you know if the guy's got it or not? And almost universally they said, almost immediately. You know, this guy has it or doesn't have it. Now, to his credit, Louis Riddick said from the beginning, Goff has it. Goff has it. He stuck with Goff while everybody else, including myself, was like, Goff doesn't have it. He said that. So I think when you know, flip him. If he doesn't have it, move out. Move on, buy the next lotto ticket. More lotto tickets, faster churn when you know. The minute you know, you got to move on. You got to be cold-blooded.
So you think that the Browns should bring in a Kirk Cousins or an Alex Smith and go get Baker Mayfield at number one?
I like that idea. You can tweet the show through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Will Cain Show. 1-800-Flowers.com always has something to surprise her. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen plus a vase absolutely free. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. This has been fun.
It's been really fun, Will.
We're going to do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
So we're going to talk about your Twitter habits.
Okay.
The filters.
Yeah.
All the things you're doing so that you never hear the mean things people say.
You know it. La, 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 la.
I heard on the Howard Stern show that you can put certain words that you actually, you will block out certain words.
Yeah, you can filter words.
I know the top word for me I'm going to be blocking momentarily.
Okay.
Coming up, the XFL is back. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is the Will Cain Podcast on ESPN Radio.
I'm not laughing at the XFL. I'm not laughing at Vince McMahon. I might be smiling because I want to be entertained. But that's the whole point, isn't it? That's what sports is. That's what all this is. We're here to be entertained. And Vince McMahon and the XFL, they will entertain us. The Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. The Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Car, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more. You can get insurance information on all of those at Progressive.com. You know, I think a lot of people are listening to Vince McMahon talk about the launch or the relaunch of the XFL some 20 years after its death, after its initial failure, and immediately scoffing at it, laughing at it. And I'm here to tell you, I think it's something to take seriously. I've even said that if there's a threat on the horizon to the NFL, the threat is going to come from something like the XFL, not something like the NBA. It's clear that football is the number one sport in America. It's clear that football is where we turn for most of our sports entertainment. The gulf of difference between the NFL and the NBA is astronomical. The NFL is a $17 billion business. The NFL gets bigger ratings on a weekend in October than the NBA does during the finals. It doesn't mean that the NBA isn't popular. It is. I like the NBA. The NBA is fun. But the NFL is king. And the NFL is king because football is king. And the biggest threat to the NFL will come from within that kingdom. It will come from within the sport of football. The primary challenge to the NFL is most likely college football. While NFL ratings have decreased over the years, 8% down on championship weekend, divisional round playoff games down, lowest since 2009 in some windows, lowest in 15 years. While that's happening, college football ratings are on the rise. While people are saying, according to polls put together by our own research extraordinaire, Paul Himbakides, also known as Himbo, saying fewer and fewer people are saying football, specifically the NFL, are their favorite sport. That's not happening in the realm of college football. So college football is the primary threat to the NFL. But something like the XFL, something like Vince McMahon's idea that launches in January and goes through 10 games, that's something I think the NFL is going to pay attention to. That's something that they're going to see as a threat. Here's Vince McMahon talking about the relaunch of the XFL.
Hi, will President Trump support this in any way, even if it's just with statements? And can you speak to San Diego as a potential market?
I have no idea whether or not President Trump will support this. And let me, this is an opportunity for me to say that as far as our league is concerned, it'll have nothing to do with politics. Absolutely nothing, and nothing to do with social issues either. We're there to play football. We want really good football. And I think that's what fans want as well. When they tune in, I don't know that they want to be dealing with political issues and things of that nature. They want good football. That's what we're going to deliver. If
you listen to this press conference at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, just a little bit earlier today, Vince McMahon hit all the hits. He played all the hits. He talked about the anthem. He talked about keeping politics and social issues out of sports. He talked about all the biggest names in football. In fact, the biggest names that aren't in football and whether or not they could end up in the XFL. By the way, it wasn't so promising for a lot of guys.
Could you clarify on the players that will be allowed to play in the league? So would Colin Kaepernick be welcome in the league?
Again, I think anyone who plays the game of football well and meets our criteria in terms of the quality of the human being as well as the player, why not? As long as everyone abides by the rules as laid down.
And just to follow up on those rules, just want to be absolutely clear I understood you correctly. You're saying it would be mandatory for players to stand during playing of the national anthem?
Well, again, in terms, there are going to be a lot of rules and regulations, and all of which are going to be out there for everyone. You're going to know them before you sign on to XFL, so I would imagine that anyone who signs on is going to abide by those rules.
One of the guys that didn't go very well for today was Johnny Manziel. While that press conference was going on, and by the way, it was an amazing press conference. It was amazing in its simplicity. It was Vince McMahon and that deep, gravelly, I've been chewing on steroids and alpha maledom for about the last 20 years voice in a room all by himself with graphics of XFL all around him, announcing the launch of the XFL, taking questions over conference call, not in the room. While that was going on, Johnny Manziel tweeted, #XFL 2020. That's when the league is set to launch. And added Vince McMahon. Shortly after that, Johnny Manziel is one of the guys that it didn't sound too good for when it comes to his future in the XFL.
Any invites be extended to players like Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick?
Well, I think this, that one of the things when I said the quality of human being is very important and just as important as the quality of the player, what I mean by that is you want someone who does not have any criminality whatsoever associated with them. And in the XFL, even if you have a DUI, you will not play in the XFL. So that would probably eliminate some of them, not all of them. If Tim Tebow wants to play, he could very well play.
Oof. Rough for Johnny Manziel. His XFL career might have only lasted about 2 minutes.
We've got to make an exception, I'd imagine, for him. He needs to be in this league. You're immediately getting eyes if Tim Tebow and Johnny Manziel play in this league.
Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, RG3, Colin Kaepernick. Stars at the quarterback position, brand names. See, that's the thing in the end. I don't think the XFL is going to take the NFL down. I don't think the XFL, when I say they are a threat, I'm not saying they're going to replace the NFL. The NFL is king not just because it's football, because it's an established brand. Brands have such power in capitalism. Brands have such power in markets. The reason the Dallas Cowboys rate is because they're an established brand. The reason the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New England Patriots rate is because the power and recognition of their brand. The NFL as a whole, that's the brand that wins. That's the brand on top. And stars are brands. You need those established names, those established stars. He's going to need Johnny Manziel, RG3. He could only hope for Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick in his league. And what I say about the NFL's brand and why they should take this XFL very seriously is because glaciers melt. They don't crack and fall into the ocean. They don't crumble on a moment's notice. And the XFL, to me, in the analogy, is the equivalent of a little miner sitting there with a pickaxe next to the glacier. And if you care about your business and you care about growing, you care about the guy outside with the pickaxe chipping away at your glacier. I don't think the NBA is the guy with the pickaxe. It doesn't mean the NBA's product isn't great, and it's not also part of the sports fans' diet. But I think the XFL, if done correctly, and by the way, failure can either be repeated or it can be learned from. If done correctly, that's the guy with the pickaxe.
Why do you think football is untouchable, though? I mean, you've heard of the Roman Empire, right? Like, not all these things last forever. Yes, it's at its peak right now, but clearly it's a little bit vulnerable. So are we in a time when we need another football league because we can't get enough football? We already have college. We already have the NFL. You think there's an appetite for a whole separate league that's, by the way, going to be less talented?
You and I have had conversations. We had this conversation, you, myself, Ryan Russillo, about mid-season NBA basketball is not good, okay? The outcome is predetermined. The fate is written. You know what teams are going to be in the conference finals, if not the NBA finals. You know these things. And we came up with the idea of an FA Cup mid-season single elimination tournament in order to bulk that up. That's the time of year this XFL is launched during. January, February, and March. It's the perfect window, yes, for more football.
See, I just don't... First off, it's going to be, like I said, less talented people playing the game. And I mean, who knows? 8 teams. Like, what's the validity of that? Like, you really think that there's an appetite for that?
I do, if done correctly.
Then why didn't these other ones work? Why didn't the USFL work? Why didn't the XFL work the first time?
Well, they were both, the XFL and the USFL, executed incredibly poorly.
One of them by the same guy.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. Failure is something you can repeat, or failure is something that you can learn from. And the guy who's a billionaire because he's created an entertainment product that people love in the WWE, who sold 100 million shares of his own entity, his own creation in order to fund this, I tend to think that Vince McMahon learns from failure and doesn't repeat failure. Straight ahead, why Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds should never be in the Hall of Fame. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. When would you prefer to spot that burglar? While he's outside casing your home or after he breaks in? The best home security is the one that protects you inside and out. Blink Home Security. Blink is a motion-activated video cam. The instant Blink detects some bad guy, even outside, you get an alert on your smartphone with the video clip. Blink is wire-free and runs on batteries that last 2 years. Get 3 Blink cams for what the other guys charge for 1, plus 10% off at blinkprotect.com/ESPN. blinkprotect.com/ESPN. Why you shouldn't allow cheaters in the Hall of Fame? It seems kind of obvious, right? It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. What's up, everyone? Will Cain here. Support for the Will Cain podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/will. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLS, consumeraccess.org, number 3030.
For launching in 2020, we have 2 years, which is plenty of time to really get it right. We intend to start conservatively with 8 teams, 40-man rosters, a 10-game regular season, and postseason featuring 2 semifinals, and, of course, a championship game. Now, what about the players? As you know, there's a wealth of talented players that we can draw from, but in the XFL, the quality of the human being is going to be as important as the quality of the player.
That's going to make for some difficult decisions there, Vince. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Vince McMahon just launched or announced the launch in a press conference of the XFL to be started, taking place, first season, 2020. A January through March league with 10 teams, you just heard him say. And nobody with criminal records. Easier said than done. Is it Stefan? What's up?
Stefan, yep. Hey, Will, big fan of the show. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to weigh in a little bit on the exception to the rule. If he's trying to build and establish a successful league, I say don't make any exceptions as far as players coming into the league. Reason for that is if you make exceptions now, it's going to open up a can of worms down the road for exceptions to be brought in later. So establish the league, set your rules, make it clear, do it now, and then you don't run into gray areas or problems down the road.
What are you talking about? Players with criminal records?
Yes.
All right, thanks for the call, Stefan. Man, that is. Here's the thing. I've done this on First Take. I've talked about this. I don't like blackballing someone from employment. I don't like blackballing someone from your industry. If somebody gets in trouble and pays their dues in society, you got to be able to allow them to rehabilitate themselves. You got to allow them to be able to come back into the fold. You got to allow them to reintegrate into being a normal human being. Vince McMahon went as far in this press conference as saying if you got a DUI, you don't have a place in the XFL. I mean, my God, Johnny Manziel's out, right?
Do you think people like that? Do you think people are like, yes, like coming down hard on these guys? Or do you think they're like, that's kind of a little bit petty?
I think they like it in a press conference moment like this. They don't like it when it's their star player, when it's their quarterback that's kicked out of the league. Everybody likes to talk strong and moral. Nobody likes to apply it to the outcome of their own fandom. So I think that's going to be a tough line for Vince McMahon to uphold. It's really interesting. Elle Duncan brought this up a little bit earlier in our show when she was sitting in with me. This is the total opposite image of the one that he launched with in 1990s. In the 1990s when the XFL launched, it was like all testosterone, all, anti-PC, just sexy cheerleaders, WWE-style trash talk, the whole deal. This one seems to be an image he's painting more of whole grain Americana, like nobody with criminal records, stand for the anthem, we're going to play the anthem.
Yeah, it's not the extreme football league, it's the boring football league. Lesser players, more rules. I don't know. You think it's going to be a success?
I think there's an opportunity for success. You always push me into positions so you can win eventually. I didn't predict. This is it, boys. This was the one that takes down the NFL right here.
We had a good run.
I said this one can be, if executed correctly, Jacob, right? Right, Jacob? This can be a success.
Absolutely. First off, you got it in a great time of the year. January, February, March,
because, I mean, there's not a whole lot of football on at that time, even when there is football. And it's perfect time. It's more TV time for them. And you got 2 weeks away for the Super Bowl, which nobody watches the Pro Bowl. I don't know why they still have it on. I mean, I'm not going to watch it. Yeah, whatever. And then you got to wait till April for the draft. And during that whole entire time, you're sitting there like, all right, football. You know, I mean, having actual football to watch would be great.
I totally agree. And as someone who talks about sports every day for a living, thanks for the call, Jacob, I would love to have football, more football to talk about in February and March. We talk about it. We talk about the draft. We talk about free agency, and I love all that. How about a little, little something going on in San Diego, a little something going on in Oakland at the same time? What's up, Nuno?
No, but isn't Vince making this about all the social stances and everything else? Because he's saying fans don't want to see that. Fans don't want to see any social protesting. They don't want to see, people not standing for the national anthem. So isn't he just trying to gain all those fans that are quote unquote fans that maybe the NFL lost?
Well, here's what's interesting. I would love to see if we can book Vince McMahon. Can we get Vince McMahon to talk about the XFL? Why not? It's the Will Cain Show. This is big time. We've already established the celebrity audience that's listening right now. Let's get Vince McMahon. Because here's what I want to ask him. What he said in this press conference, he's been thinking about this for quite some time. But I want to know why now. What was the opening that he saw now? We can guess. I can lay it out on paper. The NFL's ratings are down. The NFL is mired in politics and social issues. And when I say mired, I don't mean I'm passing moral judgment on any of the causes. I'm not saying right or wrong. What I'm saying is, what's pretty clear is sports fans go to sports for sports. They don't do it because they want to hear your latest political take. They don't see it as a proxy for their morality. They don't see it as every opportunity for tell you what you should be living your life like. And so Vince McMahon can be looking at that. He can be looking at the NFL ratings. He can look at the change in the game, making the game, quite honestly, softer. We know that it is, and you can again say it's right for it to be softer, concussions, head injuries, whatever. But we all know what we like about football. We like violence. It's true. I don't know if anybody else will say it. That's the fact, though. Violence is entertaining. Combat is entertaining. Sides battling each other, that's entertaining. That's what football represented. And maybe Vince McMahon has seen all that, seen the softening of football, seen the politics, seen the social issues, seen the ratings, and says now's the time to pounce. Now's the opening. So Nuno says, isn't that why he's doing all this? I'd like to hear him say it specifically. Yes, this is now why I'm doing it, right now. I've always wanted to do it, but this is what I see as the opportunity. This is what I see as the opening for an entrepreneurial venture. The Will Cain Show is reminding you that if you're at work, you can stream all 3 hours of the show on ESPNradio.com. It's been the source of a ton of debate today. It's going to be for years. It has been for years. What do we do with all the baseball players that we know or suspect took PEDs throughout their careers? What do we do with Barry Bonds? What do we do with Roger Clemens? I'll tell you what we do. We keep them out of the Hall of Fame. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Mike Golick here. ADT, the #1 security company, can now help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go. Get started with the ADT Starter Kit professionally installed for only $49. Plus, you'll get ADT Go, the new family mobile safety app and service with 24/7 emergency response for free with any ADT security system. Go to ADT.com/podcast to learn more today.
Requires 36-month monitoring contract, QSP and Easy Pay. Activation and early termination fees may apply. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com. Additional charge for ADT Go premium services after March 31st, 2018.
The Baseball Hall of Fame class of 2018 announced. Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds fell short.
Because we already aren't certain that everybody in there did it the right way, then just let the rest in.
Way too much smoke surrounding the fire with Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds.
They're making up these rules because of who they like and who they didn't like, who they're going to keep out or who they're going to put in.
I played in that same era, and I felt like I didn't get rewarded for playing in the area where I had to compete with people who were in that era.
If you took performance-enhancing drugs, you don't belong in the Hall of Fame. It's that easy. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens don't belong in the Hall of Fame. And it's not a hard thing for us to do. We can do this, people. We can wrap our heads around the matter of degrees. Gaylord Perry scuffed baseballs. Maybe Babe Ruth played with a corked bat. Is that the same as drinking milkshakes of HGH to the extent that your head grows to the size 9 baseball hat? Is that the same? Does that affect the outcome of the game? The same. Are deflated footballs and steroids the same? I think we all know the answers to these questions, and we can use our judgment. When you're over the line, yes, you're over the line. When you've broken the rules, yes, you've broken the rules. When you cheat, you cheat. But we also know, how far are you over the line? Is spying on somebody else's practice the same as altering your body? You're far over the line. And we know this. We know this at an instinctual level. We know degrees of cheating. We know degrees of everything, by the way. We only lie to ourselves when we say, you know what, I mean, like, you know, you let one in, you got to let them all in. We do this to get the outcome that we want. Maybe you're a Barry Bonds fan. Maybe you think rules are arbitrary and not fair. Maybe maybe you're using it as a proxy for other debates, other things, which you'd have to fill me in on what you're layering in on top of this. But it's not hard to know. If you send somebody out there who's been pumping HGH and steroids through his body for years, he's not just cheating everybody else that he's competing against, but at some point, he's got to have been cheating himself as well. He got the money, he got the All-Stars, he got the fame. Does he have to get the Hall of Fame as well? Isn't there any price at all for cheating? Ed in Kansas. What's up, Ed?
Hey, Will, I was wanting to ask you, I agree with you about cheating and steroids, Bonds and Clemens. They shouldn't belong in there. But you kind of being a hypocrite saying that Pete Rose deserved to be in there. He cheated.
Why am I being a hypocrite?
Because you said anybody that breaks a rule shouldn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
I didn't say that exactly, though, Ed. I didn't say that exactly. I didn't say you break any rule, you shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. In fact, I've tried to make the argument that we should be able to see a matter of degrees, right? We don't have to see everything as black and white. We don't have to see everything as, you know, pretend like jaywalking and murder are both crimes, so we treat them the same way. I've tried to say what we should be able to do here is use a little judgment. And yeah, I think my judgment, and maybe it's just mine, but Pete Rose didn't do something or hasn't been proven to have done something that altered the impact between the lines, altered what happened on the field. And I can make a judgment, I think it's the appropriate one, that should be forgiven and allowed into the Hall of Fame. Is Ed gone?
Well, tell that to Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Okay. Buster Olney apparently disagrees with me as well. He thinks these guys should get in. This is what Buster Olney says.
When I was still voting, I always voted for Clemens and Bonds, and I voted for Mark McGwire. I stopped voting a few years ago, but absolutely, I think you have to look at the players within the context of their times. And, you know, when Joe Morgan sent out the letter to voters back in the fall, that to me was a classic example of taking the entire issue out of context, where he talked about wanting, and I'm paraphrasing, wanted a clean Hall of Fame. Well, give me a break. I mean, the Hall of Fame's not clean. There already are PED users. I don't know for sure, but I bet the family farm back in Vermont that already steroid users have been inducted. It's not a house of the holy. It's a great baseball museum, and Bonds and Clemens should absolutely be in there.
I just don't do it, man. I just can't do the, well, if we let one guy in, we got to let them all in. I'm sure he's right. I'm sure there are steroid users in the Hall of Fame. There are PED users in the Hall of Fame. But that doesn't mean all bets are off. Come one and come all. Whatever you did, it doesn't matter. Cheaters and non-cheaters alike, come on into the Hall of Fame. The guys that did it the right way, guess what? You get to sit right next to the guys that did it the wrong way. The guys that hit your pitches over the fence because they were on PEDs, they get to now sit beside you in the Hall of Fame. The guys that juiced their pitches because they were taking PEDs and struck you out, they get there as well. I mean, if everybody gets to the Hall of Fame, there's no incentive to do things the right way. There's no incentive. If we can't distinguish right from wrong, if we can't distinguish doing it the right way and the wrong way, what's the incentive to do it the right way? By the way, Shoeless Joe Jackson, correct me if I'm wrong on this, they were accused of throwing the World Series, losing the game, impacting what happened on the field between the lines. Pete Rose, what did he say, Cerruti? He bet on his team, but only to ever win.
Yeah, but then the opposite of that would be, well, what if you didn't bet on them? Were you still trying as hard? Was he only trying really hard in the games that he bet on?
Trying hard as a manager? Yeah. Look,
like, would he use an extra pitcher late that he didn't use in a game that he didn't bet? Like, there's an issue there.
Maybe. I don't know. All I know is this. When you've taken those performance-enhancing drugs, you've done things your entire career to cheat other people out. You cheated the people you competed against. You cheated the people you played with in taking their roster spot or their place in the lineup. When you weren't up to you weren't as good as you were naturally when they were trying to compete with you and beat you out and assuming they were. You were taking stuff away from them. And then why do you get all the rewards at the end? Why is there no price to pay? None. Phone guest join me on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get the feeling of being rewarded with gold status at Shell with the Fuel Rewards program. Download the Fuel Rewards app and join and start saving 5 cents a gallon today. You can give me a call. You can still try to convince me. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Jerry Rice, speaking of Hall of Famers, Jerry Rice, he didn't hint. He said he's ready to come back and play football. He's got 80 catches in him. Could Jerry Rice do that? Could Jerry Rice at age 55 play in the NFL? It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Are you ever too old? Is Jerry Rice too old? How many old people could you beat at Name the Sport? Jerry Rice went on Adam Schefter's podcast and dropped this little nugget out of nowhere. Jerry Rice said he's not done. Jerry Rice said he's ready to play football. Jerry Rice said he's got 80 catches in him. Listen.
You could play today, right?
I was joking around with John Gruden about this because I told him, I said, John, I said, look, I still got about 80 catches in me. And he was like, don't joke with me because we'll seriously sign you, back to the team. But yeah, you know what? I played it for over 20 years. It's a whole different game now. It's more of a passer game now, and it's the ideal situation for wide receivers.
What if John said to you, Jerry, I want to come sign you. I want you to come to camp this summer.
I would be on the football field in a heartbeat.
Really?
I wouldn't even give it a second thought.
Oh, I've read that John Gruden said if he's not messing around, if he's serious, he'll sign him. John Gruden will do it. You know what I think? I think the NFL heard about the XFL. They're ready for some marketing. They're ready for some brand names. Ready for some WWE style.
I love Jerry, but I want to see him. Let's do it. Let's see it.
You don't think Jerry Rice has 80 catches in him?
I don't think he has 10 catches in him.
Do you think there is anybody? Jerry Rice is 55 years old. Okay, let's do it this way. Who is most prepared to come out of retirement, we'll say over the age of 50, and make it in the NFL? Is it not Jerry Rice?
Well, everybody brings up Herschel Walker, right, because he's in such great shape. I don't know. I mean, what are we saying? Can he rush for 500 yards? Maybe.
Maybe he's pretty strong. For
I don't know.
500 yards? How old is Herschel Walker? Jerry Rice is 55. Let's see how old Herschel Walker is. Jerry's got the game going his way. Herschel Walker's also 55. They're both 55. Who has a better chance at the age of 55 to make the NFL?
Well,
Herschel Walker or Jerry Rice? It's Jerry Rice. He told you why in the clip, too.
Only because I think you're less likely to get hurt. Like the first time Herschel takes a carry up the middle and gets popped by a middle linebacker, I'm going to be scared. Jerry at least could make a catch, get down. I'm not sure if the speed's still there, but you can still force feed him the ball. The answer to this question is any quarterback. Any quarterback can just go back and we always joked about this with Danny Cannell, and he's not in his 50s, but he could go play in the NFL right now. Would he be good? No, but he could do it.
What does that mean? He could do it. Anybody could do it.
He'd be able to go out there and complete a couple passes and look somewhat the part, but I'm more worried about injuries with all these guys. It's less about whether they can do it or not, and it's just them. They're going to get hurt.
You say anybody could do it, and the quarterback's the position, and everybody tells me Tom Brady playing until 45 is just absurd. I asked you this during the production meeting. As long as we're talking about old people in sports, I remember when Booger McFarland was on Mike and Mike, and Booger said to Greeny that he would be able to beat Gary Player in golf, if not now, at least at some point. And Greeny said, Gary Player will beat you in golf, Booger, the day before he lays down and dies. Right up to the very end of his life, Gary Player can and would beat you in golf. And I'm on Booger's side. At some point, I don't care when it is, at some point, Booger's got him.
Golf is such a wild card. You can't do it. Because golf, there are scratch golfers in their 80s that would beat most that would beat anybody young. So if it's a non-athletic sport, and golfers don't at me, but if it's a non-athletic sport, the bets are off. I think, especially Gary Player, who's in like phenomenal shape.
Could you beat every 80-year-old at soccer right now?
Yes. and I have any skill, and I could.
Could you beat every 70-year-old?
Yes.
Oh, let's keep going. Every 60-year-old?
That's a little bit tougher. What do you think that line is? What's the number? But then it depends on, like, there are some freak human beings that just like can do stuff well into their 70s, so maybe not.
I think you're in the right range when you say what's that number. A couple years ago, 6 buddies and I, we did this thing where I'd always wanted to swim from Lanai to Maui. It's 2 islands in Hawaii that are 9 miles apart. And there's a race every September, the Maui Channel Swim. And you take off from Lanai and you start swimming, and you got to make it all the way to Maui. Now, you can do a relay. You get 6 buddies.
You said 9 miles.
9 miles. And you can do a relay, and we did. It's 6 buddies, and you have to rent a boat because you jump off the boat on the tag, and it's a tag every 30 minutes. The long and short of it is you end up swimming about 1.5 miles if you do it right. And, I grew up competitively swimming since I was 6. I played water polo in college. I'm like, I got this. I started training about a year or 2 in advance. And the first leg of our race, the guy who went first, he got us a pretty good lead. We were out front, and I saw the boat across from us, and it was a big, nice, fancy boat. And I saw the guys that were on that boat, and they were a bunch of old men. I was like, I got this. I jumped into the water. I would say I had a good 500 yards on him, maybe a little less, 500 yards on him. I swear he passed me so fast, this old man. He was clearly in his mid-60s. And by the time I got out of the water, my 30-minute, I couldn't even see him. Couldn't even see their boat. He humbled me. He humbled me so thoroughly.
Humble yourself!
That I am not ready to jump on this. I can beat any old man. Just name the game. And he swam for the Olympic Club in Berkeley, it turns out, in San Francisco. He swam for the Berkeley Club. But that line you're looking for, I think it's in the early 60s.
That's incredible. So were you embarrassed? Did you talk to this guy afterwards? Like what?
No, I couldn't find him. He's too far ahead.
He just smashed you, and that was it.
Yeah. It's too far ahead. You were about to say it's embarrassing. I was embarrassed, yes, but then somebody told me he swims for the Olympic Club in Berkeley.
Yeah.
It's a famous club of really fast guys.
Let me ask you this, though. Like swimming, like a lot of old people swim. That's kind of like a muscle memory thing, right? It's more stamina than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So is that ridiculous now that we really think about it? It's probably okay. Like, you probably weren't in as good of swimming shape as he was, because he probably swims all the time.
Yeah, right.
So maybe that's not that ridiculous.
So old people can beat you at aerobic activities.
Very specific, yeah. Like, I'm convinced there are guys in their 80s that probably could bench more than I can.
Well, I'm sure that's true. Have you ever...
Well, all right, I'm a bad example. Bench more than you can.
Yeah, we should find the sport and then say, Cerruti, can you beat... Just name the sport.
We should do an old man combine, right?
Yes.
So where like I go against like old guys in different like athletic competitions. 40, shuttle drill, bench press, squats, swimming, couple laps.
Find the age group where you go, you know what? I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I can beat every 75-year-old.
It's going to be like
darts.
90.
We'll do this along with our beer challenge, our Bud Light, Miller Light.
It's a slightly different challenge, but yes. By the way, I'm convinced that Michael Jordan could average 12 to 15 points right now in the NBA.
Michael Jordan.
54. He's not giving me any defense, but he'll score.
He's not in great shape right now, is he?
That's what I'm saying. He's not playing any defense, but he'll give you points. He'll get buckets.
Could you strike out a team full? I've done this before with you, right? Could you strike out a team full of little leaguers? 9-year-olds. Could you go throw a no-hitter against the Little League World Series guys? How old are they? Like 12, 13?
12, yeah.
Bubba's shaking his head. You can't throw a no-hitter against those kids?
Way.
No way, no.
11-year-olds?
Well, are we talking about real 11-year-olds or like that kid, what's his name, who was like 17? El Monte.
No, real ones.
No, I don't think I could.
9-year-olds?
A no-hitter?
Yeah, no-hitter.
Get back to me after the beer test.
I'll fan the side. There ain't a 9-year-old on the planet that can touch me. Tweet the show through the oneairflowers.com Twitter feed at Will Cain Show. I'm at Will Cain, WILLCAIM. The Will Cain Show is reminding you, if you miss any of the show, including when I asked Victor Cruz if he'd play in the XFL in hour 1, every hour is available in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. It's been the Will Cain Show. Spain and Fitz, next.